Um, as you can see, I was born to a scientist father, so, science has always been in my genes. It's always, literally, it's an interest of me. And when I was, on the job market, thinking about where I was going to do the next turn in my career, and we were looking at possibilities, Jay looked at me and he said, well, why don't you come to Rutgers and model Tourette's with us? This is what we do. And I thought, what a fantastic opportunity. So I got to Rutgers, and as he mentioned, they had discovered all of these mutations in these high confidence genes. And this was really spectacular because what he really didn't say was, up until then, we knew very little, if anything, about the genetics of Tourette's. And even to this day, when I tell people I study Tourette's, they say, whoa, that is a black box. We know nothing about this. So when they came out with these reports in 2017, this was really exciting. And I thought, boy, let's go do this. And I got to Rutgers and we started playing with these mice. And then I realized he had done the easy part and he had left me with the hard part. Because
as usual, I did the expensive part.
Because finding the gene is one thing, figuring out what it's doing, where it's working in the brain, and how it's changing behavior is a whole nother story. And what I quickly learned was, if you look in the literature and you try to ask yourself, what do we know about Tourette's? How is it affecting brain function and brain activity? You'll find a whole bunch of different reports. Studies from humans, studies in mice that were modeling Tourette's, although they did not contain any type of gene mutation or the type of brain change that we might expect. So really, it was like, how were we going to approach this? But what we knew and what we felt confident in was that our mouse expressed the identical mutation as an affected human. And that was really important, because these are the first mice we've ever developed anywhere in the world that express the identical mutation as a human. So now we can sit here and say, well, okay, we're gonna go look, we're gonna go search for what's happening in the brain, but having the confidence that that this is the exact change that we found in a human with Tourette's, that gives you optimism that you will go find what you're looking for. So the next step was putting together a team of individuals. And we've been very blessed to have, many people that have worked on this project, people here today, people that are not here today, that were part of NJCTS, Ajin, Tess, Kowalski. These are people who are essential to our group. And I think it's very special because this is one of the only labs that I know of. I've met only one other lab where so many people in our lab either have Tourette's in their family or have Tourette's themselves. And one thing I will tell you very quickly that I've learned about our mice is that they may have a mutation in a gene that is thought to cause Tourette's. But when you watch these mice behave, you start to see some stuff. These mice do stand out from quote unquote normal mice. We do find that they have certain types of motor behaviors. So people often ask me, do mice tick? Well, we don't know if mice actually tick. That might be something that is specific to a human. But what we do see is that these mice, for example, will do certain behaviors like rearing up on the hind legs. They tend to groom a lot, and we can characterize these changes and we can see that indeed these mice are showing some differences. And that gives us confidence. It's called face validity. So our mice have what's called construct validity. They express the identical mutation to a human in a high confidence gene. They're expressing behaviors that we might expect from an individual that has Tourette's. And I will also say that one thing that we've learned is these mice outperform normal mice, believe it or not. These mice show excessive motivation. So we will put these mice into tasks where they have to learn to do something. And when you watch the motivation of these mice, so they'll have to learn to poke their nose in a hole and they'll get a reward. The reward-seeking behavior of these mice, the goal-directed behavior, is so strong in these mice that they outperform normal mice in every aspect we put them in. And I think when you look at some of the people that have Tourette's in NJCTS, people that I come across working with the Tourette Association, you see those same characteristics, that excessive motivation, the need to succeed, the want to succeed, the desire. And it's amazing to see those same qualities in our mice. And what we can also do with these mice is we can train them to do certain types of tasks. And I should say that one thing that we're very interested in is not just a tick, but we have become very interested in the cognitive changes behind a tick. And that might seem very interesting. You know, what do you mean by cognitive changes? And what we're kind of going after is this idea of how can we define a complex tick? And when we think about a complex tick, many times we'll think about these urges that precede a tick, the premonitory urge, that sensation, something that you have to do either to relieve that tension, something that you do so it's just right, you know, to satisfy that urge. And we have been going after these cognitive changes in these mice. And what we've been trying to do is redefine how we think about tick behavior. And we are redefining it in the notion of a habit. So we are now calling ticks as a maladaptive habit. And what does that mean? Okay? Every day when you behave, when you do something, you have a goal. Goal-directed behavior, right? You want to achieve an outcome, and the action that you take will help you achieve that outcome. And not surprisingly, over time, our brain has evolved ways to reward that behavior that gives you that outcome. You want to reinforce that behavior, right? Because if it gives you a reward, if it gives you something that you're achieving, you want to repeat that. And in many cases, we're starting to think about the idea that a tick is rewarding. It's satisfying these urges, and the brain is somehow rewarding that process. Now, what happens over time when you do a goal-directed action, something that you want to achieve? It becomes a habit, right? All of us every day, we've developed habits because it allows us to accomplish things without thinking about it, right? We just do it, and we do it automatically. And again, in order for those habits to evolve, your brain has to reward that behavior, so it just becomes automatic. And where I'm going with this is what we've started to find in our models. You know, we're taking a hypothesis. We have learned that our mice are more habitual, believe it or not. Not only do they have more motivation, that motivation actually leads, they're so focused on getting a reward that they end up developing habits quicker. And what we found, like many ticks, once they develop these habits, they have trouble breaking them. Now, what have we also learned about our models, which is starting to become really interesting, is that many of the drugs that individuals might take, our mice are actually responding to these drugs. So the behaviors we see are actually being modulated by the same type of drug a human might take. So what I'm trying to say is not only are we coming up with novel ways to look at these mice, to understand how tick behaviors might evolve in a human, but we're seeing that we have the opportunity to actually treat these behaviors. And once we develop these models, we can say what drugs do we know might work on them, but what drugs have we not thought about that might work on them? And also, what types of behavioral therapies can we really think about that might work? For example, why does habit reversal therapy, why is that very common? Or a treatment that works for some people? Well, as we're starting to see, ticks might just be the habit centers in our brain are just overactive. And another thing that we've started to find is that our mice have changes to neurotransmitters that people are thought to have changes in, called dopamine. I don't know if anyone's heard dopamine, but a lot of the drugs we take, they work on dopamine. And it turns out that our mice are highly motivated, they form habits quicker, they have, they work really hard because they have a lot of dopamine. So, like anything in life, we've learned there's a trade-off. I think an individual with Tourette's, they have a lot of traits and a lot of qualities that do separate them from normal people. Tim Howard would say, you know, I'm such a good goalie because I had that motivation and I had that drive that no one else had. And I see that in these mice every day. So I tell people sometimes Tourette's is a gift in a way, but sometimes with a gift, you have unintended consequences. And I think some of the motor behaviors, the anxiety, the other things that people have to work through, that is a byproduct of some of the gifts that Tourette's gives you. So I will also say that part of what we do is dependent upon the support of people and individuals. And NJCTS has been a big supporter of our lab. And what we've been able to do with that support is develop these models. And not only that, it's to take these results, turn around to the NIH. I don't have his level of funding, I'm working towards it. But it's to turn around and take these results. And for example, Tess Kowalski was funded last year with a grant from NJCTS, and she took those results. And we're still waiting to hear the final result from the funding agency, but she scored very, very, very high on her F31 course about habits and about Tourette's. So I think what you're seeing is this is a full circle. You know, I met Tess as a high school student. I continue to meet people with Tourette's. We're building a very special operation here. And you know, I really see fun things are going to come in the future, and we're going to be able to use brand new cutting edge technologies to figure out what's causing Tourette's, and we're going to put this to the forefront. When people think about autism, they're going to think about Tourette's too, and that's really our mission, is to make sure that everyone understands and supports this disorder. So thank you.